If you only knew the power of the dark side.
2, 1, 0.
Greetings, fools! Today, I'm going to invite you to come towards my bins. Please do approach them, because we're going to be doing another episode commentary today. It's certainly not one of those reaction videos. Oh, no. These seem to have cropped up recently, in my recent absence from the YouTubes. And I can say that they're a distant relation to these fan commentary type things. These are more like the sort of thing that you'd get as an extra on a DVD. Sorry, I just had to get that out of the way because this isn't going to be one of those videos where I sit there and say nothing and go every few minutes. Mostly because it'd make me sound like more of an idiot than I already am. And we don't want that now, do we? No, today we're going to be taking a look at a new retro video games show that's just been released in this last week or two. It was actually released on Sunday and released before that to Kickstarter backers. Yes, this project, which I believe is going to be a 6-episode series, is called Digitiser, the show. And it's going to be based on the old teletext section known as, Digitiser. I think they raised about 50 grand on Kickstarter, something like that, which is a reasonable amount actually, very, very creditable amount. It's nowhere near television standards in terms of the amount of money that they got. It's nowhere near television budgets, shall we say. But with that money, as we'll soon see, hopefully they've made something that is fairly close to televisual standards, because that was the original goal. Are you sick of seeing Mr. T now? Well, he's gone. And now we're going to actually look through the actual video, the first episode of Digitiser. And if you'll excuse the recommended videos there, because we're going to go full screen mode and watch together Digitiser the show. I'm going to give you a running DVD commentary. I must stress, before we go any further, I had nothing to do with this show, apart from the fact that I backed it financially. So, yeah, I suppose I did have something to do with it, but I didn't help make it. I've been laid low for about 1.5 years. Excuse me, I've got a cough, sweet. I have a cold at the moment. Yeah, I've been laid low for 1.5 years while recovering from an operation. So I have not been able to contribute to this. So I'm completely new to the whole thing. That said, there's a couple of things I must quickly say before we start. I was, fairly familiar with Digitiser before all of this. And I've seen this episode once already. Should just say that, so it's not a completely blind watch. And if there are people out there who've not seen this yet, you might want to go and watch the full episode without my commentary over it first, as you would do with the DVD commentary. This ain't no reaction video, remember. Okay, so let's get started, eh? Hey! This show is sponsored by, I'm not sure what that last logo was, but I want to draw your attention to whatever this is. I wonder if somebody included this sponsor card as a joke. Let's see, we've got a Nintendo Switch game. It's not isometric. Steam N3rd 92. I assume somebody paid £1,000 to get this advert, this spoof advert at the beginning of the show. Or maybe just Digitiser, Mr. Biffo himself, the writer, stuck it there. Actually, looking at this, that appears to be a SNES box. Oh, I've not done any research into this. Never mind, let's just go. Ooh, sponsored by Play Expo, Replay Events, and Alt.Digitiser. Is that an IRC's channel? Is that still going? Mock, indeed. And of course, we've got the role of different video game consoles to indicate that this is going to be about video games and not just crazy jokes like Digitiser on Teletext was. I have no idea why he has a lobster on his desk there. Perhaps this show is also going to be about lobsters. We're going to go through the different presenters here, the hosts. We've got Mr. Biffo, of course, in the fantastic jacket. And his friends, who we're going to see in just a sec. Ah, there we go. We've got Guru Larry on the left, next to the Marmoset. Is that a Marmoset? And Octavius Kitten, who's talking right now. I assume Octavius is a real-life cat girl, because she always has ears. Excuse me, the cat ears. And the fantastically yellowing SNES on the desk there. Excuse me, I'll just swallow the rest of the sweet. This is entirely live, no editing. All the fluffs and mistakes are left in. The subtitles are probably wildly incorrect. You might see the odd F word in there because YouTube subtitles accidentally picks those up where they aren't. But on the whole, I think the later episodes, I'm told the later episodes are going to be more sweary. Going back to these presenters, we've got Paul Gannon from the Cheap Show podcast. I think he's wearing a Ghostbusters jacket, no idea why. And Gameplay Jenny, who you may well be aware of because she has posted comments on this very channel before. She's a long-time watcher of the Yack. She's the one who's wearing a shirt that says Genius or Genius. No, Quavers, yes, with Colin Curley. I assume you could win one of those yellowing SNESes, although at that point it wouldn't have been yellowing. But yes, Colin Curley, go and look up something called Games Master Live 1992. And it's basically just a 5-minute clip of, what's his name? Radio DJ presenter, I've forgotten his name. He, instead of Dominic Diamond, presents this thing, and it's just like, it's a bit like Replay Expo, really, where you go down and play on the arcades, there's a few competitions, and Colin Curley is there. Speaking of mascots, he's a beautiful boy. And there was the beautiful boy. Gannon completely bemused by that. Aha! Hold on. Yes, of course. Mr. T, he had to appear in this show. The Digitiser Classic, and a throwback to Swan Paint with the Swan Talc. Do swans like being talked? Well, that's really none of my business. But we move on now to a section called Head to Head. Now, when I first saw this, I immediately assumed it was going to be a throwback to Head to Head, the TV show with Violet Berlin. A lot of you may remember that. It was a 5-minute segment that came on the Children's Channel, and it would just randomly appear at different times of day. You'd just be watching something else, I don't know, like the Super Mario Challenge, and it would appear after it. And show lengths were between 3 and 10 minutes, so it was very inconsistent. But it was a very enjoyable segment for the 8-year-old Harry Yack. However, this section is nothing to do with Violet Berlin's head-to-head. It is a debate. And we've got, as we can see on the screen now, the SNES pitted against the Mega Drive. Which is best? The eternal debate. Okay. So, this is one of the parts of the show that I might question. Might being the operative word. I didn't necessarily enjoy this because, well, there are certain segments of the show that better get across what the show is about. And even though the presenters work very well here, and this is a very good way of introducing them all, I'm not quite so sure about this ages-old debate that's been covered 100 million times on the internet. But there's a part of me that says, well, it's the first show, we're trying to appeal to a general audience here, and it's the sort of thing that they might find interesting. And anyway, I'd be hypocritical, because we've done, on RetroUnlim Live, we've done the Nintendo versus Sega debate probably about 10 times. So, this criticism probably isn't valid. However, I will say there are better segments in the show than this. Like I said, it's a great way to just see what everything's about, have a look at some of the silly things on the desks. It gives the other presenters a bit of a chance to chime in on things, because I think this is actually where they're most prominent. F-Zero, yes, a great game. Paul Gannon takes the hot seat here. Mr. Biffo is relegated to a panelist. Now, you might often say that Mr. Gannon is slightly overpowering in this. But it comes down to personal taste, truth. That's brilliant. Sorry, I loved that. Just the random blue hedgehog. Yeah, Mr. Biffo, just to break away from the Gannon thing, Mr. Biffo did all the editing on this show, pretty much all of the editing. And I think his influences of crazier YouTube supercuts comes in here, and we'll see a lot more of that as we go on. If you've seen found footage, which is the predecessor to this, it is a lot more, well, shall we say, unhinged and quicker cuts, zanier humour, and that's been toned down for Digitiser the show. Whether you regard that as a criticism or not is up to you. But yes, Paul Gannon, I think he's a fantastic even presenter. But I did read a funny comment. We'll actually look at the comments on this video a little bit later on. But later on in the show, we hear Paul Gannon's regional accent that he had when he was a young kid. Here, he has one of those generic radio presenter voices. You know, the old-fashioned Harry Yack voice that he used to force for many, many years because he thought it was funny. Yeah, I used to take the mick out of those radio presenter voices, the stereotypical ones. I'm not saying that Paul Gannon has one of those, but somebody in the comments did, and we'll give him credit a little bit later on when we hopefully find that comment. Did you see the rotary dial phone there on the desk? I hope that gets used later on in the show. Maybe it's a throwback to Games World Live. They would have one of those red rotary dial phones. It would be a fabricated prop, actually. It wouldn't be plugged in or anything like that because, I mean, who pays for landlines nowadays? Yeah. Well, I do, but that's against the point, isn't it? Or maybe not. Because if we try and think about who the audience for this show might be, you may say, well, original Digitiser fans. But, as Jenny storms across the studio here, just to demonstrate another fantastic prop there that actually was interactive. Interactive props are great, aren't they? They add so much to shows like this. I've forgotten what the hell we were talking about just before there. But yeah, I'll just take this opportunity to say that the desk The desk was an important, integral part of the set. Mr. Biffo paid a lot of money for this. He invested quite heavily in it. Unfortunately, I don't have the name of the people who made it, but I believe they were friends of the show, or friends of Biffo, based up north, and they had to load the desk into a van and bring it all the way down to Wolverhampton, or wherever this was filmed. Mr. T with more advice for life there! Here we have a fact from the fact hunt master himself, Mr. Larry Bundy Jr. I'm sorry, you probably can't hear this because I have the audio turned down. Please don't tell me to turn it up. Oh, a Twinkie! A chocolate Twinkie is 49 years old today. Ooh, he looks a bit like Alex Ferguson, that dude. But no, he is the composer of the Zelda theme, the famous Zelda theme. And I actually didn't know that fact. So thank you very much, Larry, for that. Go and watch Larry Bundy's channel because he's got many, many more of those fantastic facts for you to hear. We're moving on now, though, to Show and Tell with the aforementioned Larry Bundy Jr. He's reprising his role on a show called Gamers Television on cable television about a decade ago, styled Gatmas TV, presumably pronounced Gamers, but we'll gloss over that because there is a heron. I believe that's a heron. And, sorry, I keep getting distracted by all the wonderful props. So even if you don't like the contents of the show, you can just laugh at the props. Sorry, that bit always makes me laugh. It reminds me of the part in Shooting Stars with Vic and Bob, where Vic would tell a stupid joke. Nobody would laugh at it, and then a piece of tumbleweed would blow through the studio. I'm fairly certain that Vic and Bob are an influence on Mr. Biffo. But when I suggested this to Biffo, actually, anecdote time. A couple of years ago, Biffo presented a live show called Quiz Me Do. It was a live quiz in which he appeared on stage for about an hour and a half, invited people up onto the stage to be panelists, and asked them silly questions, make them do stupid things, make them pull props out of a box, sniff them, and tell him what the smell was. I'm not kidding you. But at the end of this, I left a review, and I said to Mr. Biffo himself, the only thing that was missing was Vic and Bob. And Biffo was really, really offended by this. He said, oh, well, thanks a lot, Dan. That really does a lot for my confidence. Because this was the first time that he'd ever presented live on stage, I believe. And he was a little bit self-conscious about his performance. I didn't intend to troll him. But we have the Vectrex here. The console that is indeed the wrong way up. And it's one wonderful insert that you stick on the front. This was from the early 80s. And I love the aesthetic of this. The smoothness of these games is one thing that really stands out. I'm not sure if the actual overlay does add much to the games. But, yeah, it just stops it being white on black all the time. I guess, like, teletext. Imagine if they invented these overlays for teletext. Maybe they did. Probably they did. If you go and look that up, somewhere there'll be evidence of it on the internet. Or maybe it's one of those things that's been lost to the annals of time. But Biffo uses his stick there to point to the flash cart, which contains all the different games on the Vectrex. Which is legal, incidentally. I noticed that down in the comments, somebody did say that the games aren't in public domain, but the creator has allowed people to distribute the games on flashcards and ROMs, etc., as long as they don't charge exorbitant prices to it, which is a noble thing. It's a bit like that rumour that Sir Alan Sugar made all his old Amsoft games freeware. I'm not sure if that was true, though many people have said it. And basically I use it just as an excuse to do old Amstrad games without having them taken down. Little tip, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to start a YouTube channel, beware Nintendo games, they will be taken down. Excuse me. That beeping then, I believe, was my microwavable burrito finishing. It wasn't really. So this segment of the show represents the fact that Digitiser isn't going to be entirely silly jokes like it was back in the day. This is a purely informational piece with the odd humorous quip thrown in there, and it is genuinely informative. Yes, it may be a rehash of the Gamers TV segment 10 years ago, which you can search for on YouTube, but then not everybody is a complete fanatic like I am, and I suggest that about 1 in 100 people who are watching this video right now have actually seen that. And anyway, I believe this is probably a more interesting version of that segment. The Digitiser version, if you will, is more thrilling. But there you go, that's the end of Show and Tell for the week. Who's going to be on Show and Tell next week? Maybe it'll be the Nostalgia Nerd. Maybe it'll be Slope's Game Room. Hold on. Yes, Mr. T's a device there that makes just as much sense when you hear it as in the wonky teletext subtitles. Right, here we go. This is my favourite part of the show. Paul Gannon is pointing out the fact that the title card says Pioneer rather than Video Game Pioneer. So Video Game Pioneer or Murderer becomes Video Game Pioneer or Murderer. Which, of course, Mr. Gannon had to point out in his strange Ghostbusters get-up. And Biffo really hates it. So yes, that one mistake there, well, I hesitate to say it's the funniest moment of the whole show, because it's not meant to be. It was a simple spelling error, but it made me laugh the most, and I'll tell you why, because it wonderfully encapsulates how well the team, the presenting team, gel, how they have such a great chemistry. And something like that might happen. They make this whole big thing of it, and it's hilarious how they run with it. They pick up on the error, and Biffo acts as if that's just ruined the whole damn show. We're going to have to start all over again. And I'm guessing that this little squabble with Paul Gannon is going to continue throughout the series. But in a way, we're doing a disservice to the actual section, which I think is the most captivating part of the show. The Video Game Pioneer or Murderer title. And we have here somebody who is presumably either a murderer, a video game pioneer, or the third option, both, which could potentially be the case, although they never actually point it out. When we cut to that camera just there, don't worry about the fact that it looks a bit weird. They're going to fix that for the next show. Just teething problems. There are 1 or 2 volume leveling problems here as well, but because you can't hear that, then it's totally irrelevant for this particular video, but something that I thought was worth pointing out. So Willie Higginbotham is not a murderer. Oh, this stuff is the best stuff in the show, I think, when we can play along at home. So the only problem with Games Master and Games World, I loved those shows as a kid. You could really get wrapped up in the whole thing. It was like sport for kids, football for kids, a sports broadcast for kids. But the one thing that they didn't usually include was audience participation. Of course, they had the odd competition and say, hey, go to teletext page 347 and answer this question. But if we're thinking about updating Digitiser for the 21st century, for the year 2018, then you've got to introduce those elements of audience participation. And quizzes are a great, cheap, and easy way of doing this, and they wonderfully inject the humour of Biffo's racing into the show. Thinking about it now, actually, how much of this stuff is written? How much of it is scripted? Quite a small percentage of it, I think, is rigidly scripted. He's a murderer, by the way, that guy. Yeah, quite a bit of it is roughly scripted. You have to do that when you're in a show. But if you watch RetroUnlim live, which is something that we do over on another channel, a live show, we have quizzes and stuff like that in there. But we have no idea. We have no idea what people are going to say about them. And that's where the humour comes from. What people might say in response to this. So you might deliberately post a picture of somebody there who looks like an axe murderer or something. But actually he's a very sedate and peaceful guy. He gave £1 million to charity over the course of his lifetime or something. So ladies and gentlemen, Billy Mitchell, video game pioneer or murderer, you decide. That guy wasn't a murderer. Willie Crowther. I've heard a few people criticise this segment of the show because it's a little bit close to the bone, near the knuckle, and all those other terms. A little bit controversial. But wasn't Digitiser controversial? You've got to be a little bit silly and a little bit edgy these days to catch attention. And that's why I believe that this segment is better than the debate section that we had earlier. Of course, I wouldn't be able to comment on how that might pan out in the future, because it may transpire that future quizzes aren't so good, and future debates are much better. As we go along, I'm expecting that to get much funnier. As I said, we're just bedding in here, and just easing the general audience into things, because yeah, going back to the audience of this show, a big part of the audience will be new people. The people who might have seen Games World, Head to Head, Games Master, Bits, things like that in the 90s, and want something like that in 2018. Certainly I wanted something like that. It's something I've been calling out for years. In every single damn one of these commentaries I've done for Games World, I've been saying, oh, when's Games World coming back? And I've asked the people who appeared on the show, oh, is it coming back? People like, what was his name? Electric Eddie and Big Boy Barry I've spoken to. And they're well up for a return. But yeah, it's a pity they're not in this show. Big Boy Barry is going to be on next week, but it's a pity that, I don't know. Let's see how big a part those guys play as we move along, the special guests. Yeah, just something stupid that they throw in there with the Mr. T comments. And it's a wonderful balance. It adds some balance to the rest of the show, which is a little bit more informative. Now here we have Mr. Biffo's top 3 underrated first-person shooters, which was a little bit of a gem in the show, I believe, because I used to love this stuff when Hewland did it. It was a nice little surprise. I didn't expect this sort of thing to be in the show. And the good thing for Biffo is he can make as many of these right now as he wants as he's editing the show. So if people really, really like this stuff, he can do this out of the studio. We don't need to rehire the studio to do this bit. It might only take him 15 minutes or whatever to edit something together. Well, maybe a bit more than that, but you know. something like this, do not devalue because it's short and it might feel like an afterthought thrown in there afterwards. Don't devalue it, because I really enjoyed that section, actually. Yeah, it really felt like Games Master and Games World, which I'm going to shut up about. Oh, Tales of the Unexpected. Who's this? Do we know this person? Appearing through the flaps. Excuse me, I just had to blow my nose there. And I don't know why I had to tell you that. But it's Mr. Stuart Ashen, of course, who... Has he appeared on this channel? Perhaps he has. But you'll no doubt be familiar with this gentleman. He's about to partake in a segment of the show I've forgotten the name of, but he's going to play an arcade game, and Biffo will interview him. Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be Stuart Ashen again. Oh, there we go, Arcade Europe. Ah, right. Ah, I get it. So that logo at the beginning of the show, it was for Arcade Europe, who provided the arcade for this show. How brilliant. So, amongst the boxes and dismembered heads here, we have a cabinet, which contains Dig Dug. And Ashen is going to talk us through his little gameplay here. But it's mostly an interview conducted by Mr. Biffo. Now, what's good about this segment is the fact that it could so easily have been a Games Master style challenge, a little bit like Top Gear's Star in a Reasonably Priced Car. You know, where they have the leaderboard, somebody comes in every week and goes around the track, and then there's an interview bit and they comment on what happened during the lap. But the problem with that is it's a little bit too competitive, and imagine if Ashens was playing this game to try and get a high score and trying to conduct a good interview. Now, I'm sure that Ashens could do this because he's magnificent at this, but not everybody would be, and as we go through the 6 episodes, I think there's going to be, no doubt we'll get the odd person who's less familiar with giving running commentaries and playing the game at the same time. Goodness knows, you could spend 10 years of your life trying to learn how to do it effectively, and it might never turn out right. It's a bit like playing guitar and singing at the same time. It takes a lot of practice. So, yes, good idea. Some people have said that this segment of the show, the interview segment, drags, and I never once felt that. It's all down to personal taste, as I said, but no, it was just about right. And maybe that was because Ashens is just such a captivating guy. Even when he's answering questions that he's answered hundreds of times on other podcasts, he gives new slants on his answers, new and exciting answers, new flavours. And as a result, this didn't feel stale. I've listened to a lot of podcasts with people, for example, Larry Bundy and Ashens, and people just ask them the same questions each time. And goodness knows, I do, or I try not to, but inevitably, somebody in the comments asks, how did you get your start in video gaming? And it is an interesting story, but it is worth retelling. But I don't know, I'm just a nerd, really. Yeah. You've got to remember the audience, which might be more general, and they might never have even seen this guy, Stuart Ashen. No doubt there's a few people who've seen this video and jumped over to his channel to subscribe. I'd bet tens, if not hundreds, would have already done that. It's interesting to observe the disparity between the audiences. Diversity. Diversity between the audience. So you have got the traditionalists, the Digitiser Teletext crew, who were around back then. The casual hangers-on from back then who would view Digitiser on the odd occasion, or maybe view other teletext services, such as myself. Then you've got the retro video game crew, and perhaps even separate from that, the people who enjoyed Games Master. And then on top of that, you've got the new people, the YouTube generation. And video content has changed a lot since the 1990s. I think this show wonderfully encapsulates that, how it's not exactly the same as Games Master, and I don't think I'd want it to be. I mean, if Dominic Diamond came back to do something, you'd want it to be, but this is Digitiser, and you'd want it to be a different thing, because part of me said, well, I love speedruns and races, AGDQ, games done quick, things like that. So it would have been great to have something like that in the show. But I thought about it for a day, and it doesn't really make sense to do it, because there's already 100 people out there doing that, providing that sort of niche content. And yeah, you could have put a 3 to 5 minute segment in where your special guest is playing off against one of your regular panelists. But then, why do that? You've got something like Go 8-Bit, which of course has just been canned, but there are endless repeats of that. Did it have 2 or 3 series? And it was great at what it did. Why try and copy that? Why try and outdo that? Why try and be another head-to-head or Go 8-Bit? So yeah, you can tell that more thought has gone into it, and it's probably my blatant fanboyism that wants to see gameplay. I believe this is the only time in the show that you actually get to see somebody play a game live on camera, and that's for the best, because you wouldn't want to waste precious studio time on people playing games. I mean, you can record that afterwards outside the studio. This studio would have cost money to play. Money to rent, rather. The arcade would have cost money to play, of course. And here is Mr. T rambling about accordions again. Now, allegedly, he might not appear in the next show, but we'll see. I love Mr. T. Some of the old characters are going to come back. Fat Sow, the ranting, foul-mouthed pig, is going to be in the next episode, and I'm looking forward to that. But I do hope Mr. T returns for later episodes. He's probably the most iconic part of Digi. So we move now into the final segment of the game show, which is, I don't know what it's called. Oh yeah, Duck Hunt for Real. It's a real-life recreation of Duck Hunt. And the genesis of this begins with Mr. Paul Gannon's appearance on Games Master in 91 or 92. See, there's Dominic Diamond, and here is Mr. Paul Gannon as an 8-year-old. What actually happened on Games Master was that he failed. It didn't go very well, and unfortunately, you saw a little kid cry. And there he is with his regional accent, which has been taken out of him after all of these years in the media industry. But yeah, this section is misleading, because you've got Duck Hunt on the cabinet, and you expect Mr. Paul Gannon to just have a game of Duck Hunt and get his revenge, atone for his errors, his mistakes, by beating it now in the future. But no, it's nothing like that. In a wonderful twist, Mr. Biffo is going to make him go away and don a costume. Meanwhile, these guys coming on stage are going to play the part of the hunters we've got. I'm not sure who the guy on the right is. Oh, is he from the Cheap Show podcast? We've got Ashens is back, and Mr. Tim Moore, Mr. Cheese from Digitiser back in the day. Now, these guys are going to be hunting down Paul Gannon, who in a minute you will see reappear dressed as a duck. This is the part of the show that's most typically Digitiser. It's just manic. Of course, the people who backed the Kickstarter will know that Duck Hunt for Real was one of the segments that people paid money to see. Although Mr. Gannon cannot see out of that costume, he has to use the boxes. Oh, I wonder how much that duck head mask cost. You know, I was thinking about getting an Arnold head mask and presenting future episodes. Oh, sorry. I have just noticed the lunchbox. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, God. Oh, I remember now that this segment of the show was premiered at Play Blackpool at Mr. Biffo's special Digitiser the Show panel a couple of weeks ago, rather. And when this came on the screen, I just couldn't stop giggling. It was just... that was the bit that made me laugh the most. The fact that he had a towel stuffed down his pants. And here we have the chaser, the dog, who's going to hunt out the duck. Mr. Gannon is very reluctant to come out on stage. This is wonderfully written. It might seem as if it's not written, but it's off the cuff. It might seem off the cuff and unplanned, and that's the beauty of it. The fact that it looks like it's all made up on the spot. But it's not. It's wonderfully planned. That was round 1. He's going to go away and recover for round 2. So while he does that, I'm going to speak a little bit more about the Play Expo panel, which was wonderful. Slopes Game Room, Kim Justice, Biffo himself, Gannon, and Octavius were on the panel for that. A couple of other guys were supposed to be, but they unfortunately couldn't make it on the day. As poor Gannon. He can't see a damn thing there, can he? But this was the highlight of the panel. Apart from the fact that people were throwing props about, which was potentially dangerous and I wouldn't recommend it, but it was mildly humorous. Just people acting like kids. Now, round 3. Which is the best round of all. It's going to be the decider to see what happens. If Gannon is going to get his revenge for all those years of hurt. They never stopped him dreaming. He's a bit reluctant to come out again. Where is he? Come on. Oh my! And of course, this is the real revenge that he gets. A digitized, blood-filled segment. No! He says there that he got a bit trigger-happy. Paul Gammon! Gammon! Yeah, he said on all those years ago on Games Master that he got a bit trigger-happy. And that wonderfully brings the show to a brilliant conclusion. And all you can do is applaud and say that that was wonderfully, wonderfully timed. You can see that Mr. Biffo is a professional writer who works on professional shows like the 4 O'Clock Club, Danny's House, The Sutty Show, Pudsey the Movie, and many other wonderful things like that. Now, minimize. That was, in my opinion, a fantastic return to form for Digitiser. A couple of things worth pointing out before we look at the comments, and indeed some of the related videos, the embarrassing related videos in the sidebar. That, I've forgotten what the hell I was going to say, so let's just scroll down and it'll come back into my head. Oh dear, damn you, Richard Ashcroft. So, a couple of comments that I would like to highlight here. I wonder if we could get them more easily by sorting by most popular. There we go, we've got a couple of my comments there. A truly PINONEERING show. Somebody suggests that the volume needs leveling. Just a minor gripe, though, that is, in comparison to the greater whole of the show that Biffo's created. He had a moment of doubt when lots and lots of people were complaining about this, but they're not really complaints, because it's going to be fixed in the next show. Every show has teething problems. I mean, for goodness sake, the volume on this very video you're watching right now is too damn low, isn't it? Oh, come on, Yack, sort it out. Mr. T confirmed, yes. Some people talking about the Nintendo v Sega battle. Now that proves... well, there are quite a few people actually talking about that, we'll see as we scroll down. Now that proves that maybe I was wrong about the fact that segment of the show was less impressive. Again, just personal taste, because it's got a lot of people talking. It's a big talking point. Yes, I might have heard it 100 times and seen people discuss it 100 times, but maybe it remains a ubiquitous subject, and I don't know, maybe it's interesting to other people. Paul Drake said that was disturbing. 6 people thumbed it up. A lot of people are saying that. They're giving stupid comments, like stupid ratings, like 11 out of 10. I think I gave it 0.3 out of 10 there. 80s Nostalgia says, backing this was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Oh, but someone else there has put, love this PINONEERING show. But I can assure you that I said it first. I posted it on Twitter before Brian Smith did. Chinny Vision, friend of the show, says it's superb. Now, I like the fact that the comment section is not filled with yes men. It is not filled with yes men. Yes men are not conducive to a good product. So, I don't think Biffo should be worried in any way whatsoever. They're not really negative comments, are they? So this guy says, needs more non-contextual gyrating girls in bikinis, just like Games Master of old, and indeed the Games Animal Show, which I'm equally looking forward to. Maybe we'll do a commentary on that soon. Or not, because it'll get rated as 18+. Somebody says, Ganon is like discount Andy Crane. I think Ganon's better, isn't he? Ooh, don't at me, don't at me. Oh, somebody asks, where are the Goojons? Good question. I hope Goojon John appears in future episodes. I missed him. Oh. So someone suggests here, Retro Cabetha suggests that William Higginbottom was both a murderer and a video game pioneer. He created Tennis for Two for oscilloscopes, but also developed electronics for the first nuclear bomb. Oh. It's a little bit heavy for this sort of show, don't you think? We should be talking about accordions filled with honey and nonsense like that. Here we go. This is the comment that I mentioned a couple of times. After hearing Paul Ganon talking as a kid, I now know that he's got a permanent phone voice syndrome that a lot of people with regional accents contract when they work in the media. Harry Yack has a touch of that. That's the end of my lemonade. But that's not the end of this, because we're going to spend a bit more time looking at these comments. Quite often the comments are what makes the video. Not saying that the show's bad, but the comments are equally as good, shall we say. Murderer, our game developer, is genius. Agreed? Let's see here. This is a longer comment. I would have backed you in a heartbeat. This show is the definition of what I would say a video game magazine should be. Again, agreed, there was a very, very good balance. And one good thing about it was, it being a web show, you're not restricted to 25 minutes, so you can keep in everything you like. Now, this is an age-old comment, an age-old gripe that people have with classic albums, and they go back to these albums and say, well, it would be better if you remove this song and this song as a cohesive whole. But these days, the 90s, noughties, 10s, or whatever we're in now, we're way past the concept album day, and people just skip past tracks that they don't like. So you might say, give people extra content, and let them skip past the stuff that they don't like, because you can't gonna guess what they don't like. As I mentioned earlier, the thing with Ashen's, I don't think that segment was too long. I've heard at least half a dozen people mention that. I disagree. Again, personal taste. Let's see here. A lovely retro game show. Is this the real David Mitchell from TV fame? I can't knock... This is, by the way, is my impression of David Mitchell. I can't knock the effort, but TV shows and video games existed because YouTube didn't. The panel themselves create excellent content that effectively replace TV shows and gaming. I know it's supposed to bring back the good old days of gaming shows, but it feels awkwardly anachronistic. Now I know what the reply is going to be before I see this. I think that's what the show was supposed to do. Yes, sort of the point. It's what the show was aiming at. But we'll give David Mitchell a pass. He's been busy on that Mitchell and Webb look and various other things down the years. No Goo John John, 10 out of 50. Ah, agreed, where is he? This is a mess. Laughing my ass off. That's why it's good, though. Someone mentions that they'd watch this. They'd not watch this in the Patreon preview. Now, the reason why Biffo released this a week early to the Patreon people is the fact that he received... I think I'm okay in saying this because he's mentioned it publicly. But somebody asked for the money back and they weren't happy with the way the product was progressing. Which I guess if you've got hundreds and hundreds of backers, it would happen at least once. Somebody's going to say, I don't like the looks of this. But the overwhelming majority, 99.99999 recurring percent of people, understood entirely what this was about. And the good thing is that those people kindly covered the money that the dissatisfied customer demanded back. So Biffo was not left out of pocket, and in fact he earned money from it. Not that he was looking to earn money from it, but that was nice to see, the goodness of people's hearts. Righted that wrong, I guess? I don't know, you're entitled to your own opinion. But please do remember, guys, that when you're backing something on Patreon or Kickstarter, well, maybe not Patreon, but Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you're not customers. You're donating money to the show. And if you do get any rewards from that, any physical rewards, they should be seen as extras. I know people who've backed stuff in the past and complain because they didn't get their perks. But, I mean, it depends how on the fence you are about the whole thing, because if you're a neutral observer and you're not sure what to think of Digitiser, then you might say, that was rubbish, I want my money back. Let's move on, shall we? We're getting stuck in the colostomy bag. Oh! This is what Go 8-Bit should have been. Absolutely love it. I think late night reviews... that Go 8-Bit is, of course, a different animal, and it was more setting out to emulate Games Master. I mean, well, Games World, specifically, the Wednesday and Friday shows where it was just 1v1. They would play against each other on the games. There's my goodness, excuse me. There's an additional problem here, with this being a web series. In trying to get clearance for these games, you probably would have to pay hundreds of pounds for the copyrights. So that's not really something that's affordable when you've only got 50 grand to spend. But, yeah, I suppose you can throw that in the pile of reasons why not to make this too much like Games Master. So somebody asks here, Mad Gaz, hope to see the man in a future episode. I hope he's there. The man with the long chin. Get that effing pointer away from the Vectrex. Soap Binch says, stay away from our bins. They are wonderful bins in this show, aren't they? They're high-quality bins. They're American-style trash cans rather than the wheelie bins that I expected Mr. T to be talking about. You know, the black, blue, and green ones that you get and you put out every Friday. An interesting comment that somebody made on one of my Twitter posts last night was that, as a kid, I always found Mr... Shall we try and find that? Shall we try and find that comment? Yeah, we can give the guy credit if we find it. Here we go, this is my Twitter. If you want to follow me, ladies and gentlemen. Is this the one? Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just find this. It's worth the wait, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. New rules for new life. When I was a kid, Mr. T's obsession with his bins was bizarre. Now I'm middle-aged and it all resonates with me. Yeah, absolutely. Same with me as well. The problem is, when I put my bins out on a Friday, I keep expecting these thugs to come and steal it. I've had these bins stolen in the past and I know what it feels like. Mr. T, you were right all along. Yeah, and it also sucks when somebody goes past and throws cans of half-drunk Stella in there. Ugh. It makes your bins smell. Who wants to go cleaning bins? Anyway, back to the comments. We'll do a few more, and then we'll wrap this up. I'm crabbing you up, man. Haha, that reveal had me smiling all day at school way back when. Could there have been any way that we could get revealos in this show? I know in the previous show, Found Footage, there were the equivalent of revealos, hidden messages. I haven't found any in this show yet, though. A few comments about the camera and sound. Part of the course, though. It'll be ironed out in episode 2. Lovely stuff. Kinda disappointed the dog didn't tear his mask off at the end to reveal Dominic Diamond. Oh, excuse me. I apologise. I do have a cold. I'm really stuffed up. But yeah, Dominic Diamond now lives in Canada, so it would be difficult for him to come over and appear. I'd love for Games Master to come back, but it would have to be him presenting it, with maybe the game's animal commentating too, and some of the classic people. Rick Henderson, maybe? Or maybe not. There might be too many arguments with that. I don't know. People's opinions of him are mixed. You used bad lip reading Sting at the start. Although it's from GarageBand, so fair enough. So that's the Digitiser introduction. I think that's how it went. I really liked that little jingle. Did Biffo write that in inverted commas? Well, whoever did, well done. Great work. So those were the top comments. There are many, many more hilarious ones, but we're going to be here all year. And I have to go and eat my now frozen solid microwave burrito. In summary, I'd like to say thank you very much to Mr. Biffo. I think I'll get the picture of Mr. T back up here again because he's going to do the outro. I don't know. What would he say? Sayonara, Yack Watchers. Get some Snickers. I don't know. Was that Mr. T enough for you? I hope so. Good night.